I wanted to talk a little bit more about um, what Bettina already spoke about last week. She talked about this really interesting relationship between the five characteristics and dukkha, or suffering, which I thought was really novel and interesting. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about it and maybe talk about it from the perspective of um, the end of suffering. And I'll read a sutta that speaks to this. So I'm just going to review a little bit. I think Denise wasn't here last week, and I think we can all use a little bit of a review. Um, it's not the first time we've talked about the five characteristics. We still haven't devoted a whole class to it, and we're still not doing that tonight, but we're covering it in bits and pieces here and there. So hopefully that'll give us a sense of it. So the five characteristics, as I understand it, are the things that if we understood it, we wouldn't um, cling, and we wouldn't have a false sense of self, and we wouldn't suffer. And the five characteristics are basically just like everything that's going on that makes us us. Everything in our experience can all be boiled down to these five phenomena that are going on. And they're called skandhas, which translates as bundles or heaps. Kind of like saying, like, there's this bunch of stuff that's happening and this bunch of stuff that's happening, but I don't really like the translation of bundles. And Bettina used a really interesting one that I had never heard last week, and she called them activities, which was kind of cool because it kind of showed how that they're more like a verb than a noun. But I'm just going to stick with characteristics for the sake of the conversation tonight. And they are form, vedana, which you may recall is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Perception, mental formations, and consciousness. So form means the body, the physical world, generally the body, but the physical world, that's form. That's what's going on. We have this form. And to some degree, based on the form, we can impute a sense of self, like we identify with this body as being me or mine. And then vedana, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, is also very subjective. Some people might find something pleasant that another person finds unpleasant or neutral. So it's not inherent in the thing. So because of that, we often create a self around the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Also, the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral creates these reactions in us of pushing away or holding on, or maybe if it's neutral, we kind of space out. And those reactions, as we know, are the foundation of dukkha. So the Vedana is very much like, unless you're very, very trained in your mind, you're going to cling in response to pleasant, and you're going to push away in response to unpleasant, or maybe like, check out in response to neutral. So those three responses very much create a sense of self and and are all suffering. So we can see how the vedana will also lead to suffering. And then the perception is, you know, how we interpret things, how we view the world. We look through our own belief systems, we look through our own conditioning, we look through our own experiences, and, you know, 50 people look at the same thing and see 50 different things. So perception is also very subjective, and therefore also gives rise to a sense of self and can create the suffering that comes along with that. And then mental formations is all the stories that we tell in response to everything. So all of our mental reactions, all of our emotional reactions, all of that is in this big heap of mental formations. And I think we know very easily how much suffering gets created by the mental formations. So the final one, which is the one that I want to focus on tonight, is consciousness. And consciousness is arguably the purest of the 5 characteristics and the least subjective. Consciousness is something that exists at the sense doors. So when there's eye consciousness and there's an object, seeing happens. When there's ear consciousness and a sound, hearing happens. When there's taste consciousness and a taste, etc. So consciousness is just that which lives at the sense doors, including the mind, that creates a sense of knowing that there is something. And then we layer all the other stuff on top of it. So consciousness knows that there's a taste, and then maybe we perceive the taste as pleasant, and maybe we interpret the taste as sweet, or our perspective of the taste is that it's good or that it's fresh or whatever. And then the mental formation, it might be like, oh gosh, I want to learn how to make this. This is really delicious. You know, I want to have this again tomorrow. And then, you know, the whole cycle of wanting is born. But the consciousness, when you stop there, and really at each of these phases, there's an opportunity to stop and not progress to the next level and get to the point of dukkha. So just because something's pleasant doesn't necessarily mean that there has to be a wanting. You know, if you're trained enough and if your mindfulness is strong, when pleasant arises, you're simply aware that pleasant is present, and there doesn't have to be anything added onto it. There isn't craving. But if you stop at just consciousness and just take in whatever consciousness is aware of, then there doesn't even give rise to a sense of self. There's a story that I'll sort of repeat to the best of my ability. I bet you Lauren's heard it before because I know that she's listened to Joseph. So Joseph Goldstein is a renowned teacher in this tradition, and he tells this story. And you know, in Buddhist psychology, there's 3 personality types: people that tend toward desire or craving, wanting, people that tend toward aversion, and people that tend toward confusion. So Joseph is a self-professed greed type. And he says that once he was in the line at IMS, the retreat center that he founded and where he still basically lives, and he was in the line for the noon meal, and he was at the front of the line, and he was looking at the food, and he was feeling a lot of greed arising. And then, oh, he wasn't quite at the front. Now remembering, this were the early days, back when Lauren was sitting at IMS ages ago. The early days of IMS. Now, if you go there, it's like a smorgasbord, and the food is so fantastic and plentiful, and it like really gives rise to greed. But back then, there, a lot of people report that there wasn't enough food. Like that was a consistent problem, was that they would run out of things. So a lot of people, it would induce a lot of greed. People would leave whatever they were doing and hurry over to the food line and get in line as early as they could, because they didn't want to run out of food before they got to the front of the line. So Joseph was in the line, and he could see the food, but he wasn't in the front. And he saw something that he really liked, and he started to worry that there wasn't going to be enough. And he started to think about wanting the food, and think about the food not being there by the time he got there. And his mindfulness practice is, of course, very strong. I mean, he was a monk in Asia for years before he came here and brought Buddhism to the West. And so, when you have craving and you have anything that is suffering, if you're really tuned in, you feel it, and you experience it very viscerally in the body, or you maybe even see it in the mind. So he wasn't like so advanced that he doesn't have craving anymore, because you only get there when you're fully enlightened. And he may be somewhat enlightened, but he's not a Buddha or an Arahant, a fully enlightened being. So the craving came, the greed came, and then the mindfulness came, and he recognized the greed. And then he realized, okay, what's happening here is seeing. That's all that's happening, is seeing. And once he stripped away the content and recognized that there was just seeing consciousness, seeing, then the greed fell away. It was just like, in this moment, seeing is happening. And then there's no self, there's just seeing. There's not I'm seeing, it's just seeing. And you can see the difference, even that small distinction between I'm seeing, because then what I'm seeing has that flavor of the perception and what I like in what I see, as opposed to seeing is happening. Ajahn Sumedho has that, is a monk that had a monastery in England that's still going on, but he's retired, and he has that kind of mantra. This is what's happening now, basically. And I'm paraphrasing it, but just that awareness of like, no, it's not I'm angry. Anger has arisen. It's not, I'm hearing has arisen. I'm not seeing the food, seeing is happening. So I really like this tool, especially like when something like anger is happening, or, jealousy, or hurt, or fear. It can be so helpful to just recognize this is what's happening. This is, consciousness is aware that this is what's happening. And if we don't interpret it and we don't make it mine, then the suffering is not part of it. So There's a beautiful sutta that I may have shared before. I'm not really sure if I've done it in this go round of our Mindful Mondays or in the past, but it's always worth repeating. So I used to know it by heart. I have it on my wall over there. See that little white thing? Because it's such a it's just, for me, it's the most helpful reminder of how to be free. So I'll try to recite it to the best I can. If I need to look at it, I'll look at it. So it goes like this. When for you in the seen is only the seen, in the heard is only the heard, in the sensed is only the sensed, in the cognized is only the cognized, then there will be no you in terms of that. When there is no you in terms of that, you are neither here, nor there, nor yonder. Nor between the two. This, just this, is the end of suffering. When there is no you in terms of that, when there is just the seen and the seen, just the heard in the heard, just the sensed in the sensed, just the cognized in the cognized, then there is no you in terms of that. When there is no you in terms of that, you are neither here nor there nor yonder, nor between the two. This, just this, is the end of suffering. So can we even imagine a world where we perceive things and we're conscious of things not in relation to us, but just as they are? Just, I'm seeing, I'm hearing, I'm smelling, I'm tasting, I'm sensing. I mean, it's radical. It's radical. And I know that if you've been on a retreat or had the privilege to practice really at length, and you can see how the mind gets to resembling maybe a small fraction of what the Buddha understood, where the mind is quiet, where there is no sense of self, where there is no idea of things being permanent, where the mind becomes so clarified that you start to understand the truth of how things are. And you taste this experience of there being no you in terms of that, where you can hear something and see something, and consciousness is just functioning as consciousness, and the self just fades away, and it's so peaceful. And you really get to see the teachings that, yeah, there is no suffering when there is no self. And that when there's just this consciousness in its pure form, there is no self. So as much as it can arise spontaneously when the mind becomes very still and when, all the dust settles, it's also something that we can cultivate. We can practice. And, the way I practice it is sometimes when I take a walk, I do a particular kind of walking meditation where I just kind of cycle through the different senses that I'm most aware of. So I'll walk, and if there's sound that's particularly loud, I'll just say to myself, hearing. And then as long as hearing is the most predominant sound, I'll just stick with hearing. And then I'll notice that my visual field is being distracted by something, and I'll just note seeing, and not get so much caught up in the fact of what I'm seeing, but aware that seeing is the predominant sense at this moment, and that I'm mostly aware of seeing happening. And then sometimes I'll be aware of something in my body, like often it's the feeling of my arm swinging alongside me, and sometimes that'll move to the foreground, and I'll just sense feeling. And I'll just spend a half an hour, however long that I'm walking, just tuning in to the different sense doors and noting which sense door is predominant. And it really lets go of the content. And when you let go of the content, the mental formations are quieted. And then when the mental formations are quieted, you're just existing in this realm of awareness. And it's nice. It's nice. So we're going to try to practice that a little bit. And we can do it first in our movement practice. And then I'll have us do it in our sitting practice, initially with our eyes open so that we can see what that's like. And I'm not somebody who's a big fan of meditating with open eyes. A lot of traditions do that as their main practice, but I don't. But we'll just get a taste of it, and then we'll go into silence, and you'll just see how you want to work with it that way. So we can stand if that is available to you, or sit if that is better. And we can start I like to sometimes just rock from side to side and connect to the sensation of the feet. Just to ground in the standing posture. Good. And then come to stillness. And bring the palms in front of you. And we're just going to bring one arm back and up, and then down the midline. And then bring the other one back and up and down the midline. And then just notice, to the extent that you're hearing me, that hearing consciousness is happening. And then if the eyes are open, switch and just be primarily aware of seeing. And notice if the invitation to be aware of seeing, you started to be interested in what you're seeing, as opposed to just aware that you're seeing. The eyes are working, there's light, there are objects. Good. And then we'll take both arms come back and up and bend the knees like you're rowing a boat and come down. And notice if there's anything that the mind is working on here. If there's mind consciousness happening. Inhaling the arms up, exhaling, bending the knees, squatting down. Let's do two more. And then come back to standing. Have the palms face forward. Feel the breath. And then send the arms up. We'll interlace the fingers, except for the index fingers. We'll extend those up like a steeple. And then inhale and lift the ribs up out of the hips. And then exhale, send the hips to the right and the arms and body to the left. And then if you think you're not aware of seeing, or if you're not recognizing how prominent seeing is in your consciousness, close your eyes and then notice what comes to the fore. So see if sound or sensation or maybe taste or smell is prominent, or feeling or thinking. And then open the eyes again and see if it changes. And then lift up, inhale. Exhale, hips to the left, arms and body to the right. What are you aware of? And inhale up. Exhale the arms down, clasp them behind your back, interlacing the fingers. Roll the shoulders back. Try to lift the arms up away from the body. Let your breath deepen and see if you can feel it across your chest. And just see which sense is predominant now. It's not that there's only one. We obviously can see and hear and feel and taste and smell and all of that at the same time. Notice all the senses that are working. Is there even a taste in your mouth right now? Is there a smell in the space where you're in? Good. And then inhale and reach the arms up. Exhale and bend over. Feel the feet on the ground. Release the crown of the head. See what you're aware of. And then inhale and roll yourself up. Reach the arms up. Exhale the hands together at the heart. Release the hands down. And then slowly make your way back to your seat. Coming into whatever posture works for your meditation. So I'm going to invite you to let your lids be heavy so that your gaze is soft while your eyes remain open. And perhaps you're gazing down. So there's not a whole lot of visual stimulation coming in, but seeing is happening. Notice what you're seeing to begin, because that's the crudest, most obvious place that we go is to the what of seeing. So I'm looking at my computer keyboard. I see the G and the H the most. And see if you can try to move away from the object being seen to the awareness that seeing is happening. So it's almost like your perspective is from in to out rather than out to in, rather than the object being taken in by the eyes. It's more of an awareness that the eyes are seeing. And of course, the eyes are just the doorway through which seeing happens, and consciousness is seeing. Seeing is happening. Just for fun, take your hand and place it in front of you so that the object that you're seeing is changed. And see if it feels like anything has really shifted. If you're really in the seeing is happening space, it's not very different to have the hand there or to not have the hand there. You can take the hand away again. Then you're welcome to leave your eyes open if that feels beneficial, or you can close your eyes. Aware of sound. You might initially find yourself also aware of the vedana, finding this pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And see if you can orient your mind from the sound of the bell, where the primary object of your awareness is the sound itself, and switch to the primary object of your awareness being hearing happening. It's not that you don't continue to hear the bell or the sound of my voice or background noise. It's just the orientation shifts foreground to background. Hearing is happening. And if you are someplace where there is a smell, you can become aware of smell happening. And it seems like I may be asking you to effort, to try, but really it's like a relaxing back. It's an awareness that the eyes don't try to see and the ears don't try to hear and the nose doesn't try to smell. It's just happening. And there's an awareness that smelling is present, if it is, or the absence of smell. And then seeing if there's a taste that might be present in the mouth. Perhaps a metallic taste in the saliva or a slight remnant of something eaten earlier. Is tasting happening? Sometimes when it's something as subtle as the taste of the mouth, it can be hard to be aware that taste is happening But the subtlety can also help because there's not a big, strong flavor to identify with. It might even become easier in the subtlety to be aware. Taste is happening. Consciousness exists at the tongue. And then we'll shift to the mind. This is a hard one. It's so easy to be seduced by the content of the mind. See if instead you can just be aware if thinking is happening. Without regard for the thoughts. Or if there's emotion that's present, not to latch your awareness into the emotion, just to be aware that there's an awareness of what's here in the sense door of the mind. It's a very light touch of awareness. Sayadaw U Tejaniya has described it as the touch of a mosquito on your skin. That's how little effort it takes to be aware of what's there. The thoughts, the moods, the feelings, the perceptions, all of this is mind. Mind consciousness happening. And when we do this, there's no right or wrong. Can you see that not only is there no me or mine, but there's no good or bad. There's no right or wrong. There just is. How freeing. It's just this. This is what's here. I don't have to change it. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to let it go. Just consciousness aware of it. And then finally, we'll turn to the body sensations where feeling is happening. We can be aware that we're feeling. So it's not the pain, it's not the tingling in my foot or the sensation of my fingertips touching. It's just awareness that the sense door is operating and that sensations are being known. Just the sensed. Just the sensed. Just this. It's not that I don't feel the fingertips touching, or the ache in the knee, or the back, or the pleasantness in the belly, or whatever's there. I just don't add anything. It just is how it is. It's not good, it's not bad. It's just sensation. So we'll continue to sit quietly for a while now. See if you want to keep practicing in this way, being aware of the consciousness and whatever the sense door is sensing without adding or subtracting or evaluating in any way. You can use the mantra if it's helpful to you. It's like this now. Or you can note tasting, thinking, feeling, or none of that, whatever serves you, and staying connected to the bare essence of your experience. Just this.